The Ghost Ship of the Pacific, Part 1. The voyage begins. The ocean stretched endlessly around them, a liquid desert of gray and silver under a dying sun. The USS Providence, a U.S. Navy oceanographic research vessel, cut through the Pacific waters on a late November evening. The air smelled of salt and diesel. The low hum of engines blended with the creaking of the hull. Inside the control room, Captain Daniel Harker watched the sonar readings flicker across a glowing blue screen. Everything seemed routine, but that was before the static began. The signal, Captain. We're getting an anomaly, said Lieutenant Sarah Whitmore, the ship's communications officer. She leaned over the console, adjusting the dials. It's a distress signal, old frequency. But it's not in any of our databases. Captain Harker frowned. Source, about 60 nautical miles east. Looks like drifting coordinates. No ID code. Could be a pirate trap, muttered Chief Engineer Miles Ortega, lighting a cigarette near the open hatch. We've had reports from this sector. Harker shook his head. No pirates this far into restricted waters. Sarah turned, her brow furrowed. Sir, this isn't just noise. It's a repeating message. I ran a spectrogram fiddle to listen. She hit playback. Through the static came a faint, broken voice. Greater than this is the SS Arcadia. Anyone? Please respond. We are then silence. The captain felt a chill crawl down his neck. The SS Arcadia. He remembered that name. It was a civilian vessel, a luxury liner that had vanished 50 years ago. Somewhere in the Pacific. It was supposed to have gone down with all 211 souls aboard. No wreckage had ever been found. Course correction. By midnight. The fog had thickened into a solid wall. The Providence slowed to half speed, radar sweeping in wide arcs. The coordinates from the signal were drawing them toward the middle of nowhere. No islands, no known currents, nothing but open sea. Visibilities down to 50 meters. Ortega reported from the engine room. Temperatures dropping fast too. It's like we hit a different ocean. Captain Harker rubbed his temple. Any sign of the source? Sarah's voice crackled through the intercom. Sir? Sonar's picking up something big. Stationary. Metallic. Let's take a look. The deck lights were switched on. Their white beams piercing the fog, revealing something massive, looming ahead. At first it looked like a cliff. Then the shape resolved into something far stranger. A rusted hull, tilting to one side, half submerged in black water. The faded letters on the stern spelled it out clearly. Despite the corrosion, greater than SS Arcadia, the bridge fell silent. Miles whispered, that's impossible. The boarding. By dawn, the sea was flat as glass. The Providence anchored alongside the derelict ship. A boarding team of 6, including Captain Harker, Sarah, and Ortega, prepared to investigate. The Arcadia towered over them like a floating corpse. Her hull was covered in barnacles and seaweed, the windows shattered, decks warped by decades of decay. A thick rope of mist clung to her masts, refusing to lift even under sunlight. As the team climbed aboard. A low metallic groan echoed through the vessel, like an exhale from something asleep for too long. Jesus, whispered Sarah, sweeping her flashlight across the deck. It's like a graveyard. They passed overturned deck chairs, broken lifeboats, and the skeletal remains of what might have once been a ballroom. The chandeliers still hung from the ceiling, swaying gently as if moved by unseen hands. Ortega crouched near a corroded control panel. Captain, look at this. The wiring's old like pre-war tech, but some of it's been replaced. Recently, replaced. Harker frowned. By who? Before Ortega could answer, Sarah's radio crackled again. It wasn't her own voice this time. Bridge 2. Engine room. Pressures falling. The voice was faint, distorted, but it carried a tone of authority. It sounded like someone giving orders. Someone who shouldn't exist. Sarah turned pale. Sir, that voice came from the ship's internal frequency, not ours. Captain Harker looked at her, then back toward the dark corridor, stretching deeper into the Arcadia. Stay sharp, he said quietly. We're not alone. Below deck they descended into the lower levels, a maze of narrow hallways and cabins. Walls slick with moisture. Faded photographs clung to the walls, showing smiling passengers in elegant clothes. Time had eaten everything except their eyes. The faces were gone. But the eyes remained blurred yet staring. Sarah paused beside a cabin door that hung open. Inside, a dining table was still set for dinner. Plates, glasses, silverware, all perfectly arranged. Only the food had rotted into black dust, and then the music started. It was soft at first, a gramophone melody, waltzing from somewhere deep inside the ship. The old record hissed and popped, but the tune was unmistakable. Blue Skies by Irving Berlin. Ortega's flashlight trembled. Who turned that on? They followed the sound down a passageway that led to a grand dining hall. The doors creaked open, revealing rows of tables, all set as if for a feast. The chandeliers glowed faintly, though no power should have existed. And seated at the head table was a man in a captain's uniform, face pale and eyes dark as the abyss. He raised a glass slowly, as if to welcome them. Sarah screamed. The lights flickered, and the entire hall went dark. 5. The first death, when the emergency lanterns came back on. Ortega was gone. His flashlight lay on the floor, its beam pointing toward a hatchway leading down to the cargo hold. They shouted his name, but the only reply was the echo of their own voices. Harker ordered 2 men to stay on the upper deck while he and Sarah went below. The hatch groaned as they opened it, revealing a stairway descending into thick darkness. The smell hit them first. Rotting salt, iron and something like burnt flesh. Halfway down. Sarah froze. Captain, she whispered. Look. Ortega's boot was sticking out from beneath a collapsed cargo net. His body was twisted unnaturally, face pale, eyes wide open, his expression locked in a silent scream. But the skin around his neck was covered in barnacles. Dear God. Harker muttered suddenly. The ship tilted violently, throwing them against the wall. Metal screamed around them as if something massive had just moved beneath the hull. Asterisk, the Arcadia wasn't drifting anymore. It was moving. 6. The awakening back aboard the Providence. The radar operator shouted through the comms, "Captain, the derelict is changing course. She's under power." Asterisk, but there was no engine sound, no propeller churn. The Arcadia was gliding silently through the fog, dragging the Providence's anchor chain along with it. Asterisk, Sarah clutched her head, grimacing. "Sir, I can hear them. Voices. Hundreds of them." Asterisk, what are they saying? Asterisk, she swallowed hard. They're saying, "Welcome aboard." Asterisk, the deck beneath them began to pulse, like a heartbeat. The walls seemed to breathe. Asterisk, and then, faintly through the metal, came the sound of knocking, rhythmic, like hands pounding from inside the hull. Greater than, knock, knock, knock. Captain Harker drew his sidearm. Back to the boat. Now. They ran toward the boarding rope, but the Providence was no longer there. Only fog and water. Asterisk. And when they looked back, the Arcadia's deck was full. Silhouettes of people standing motionless. Facing them. Asterisk, hundreds of figures in tattered clothes, their faces obscured. Their eyes glowing faint blue in the mist. Asterisk, Sarah whispered, "Passengers." The captain raised his gun, but the nearest figure stepped forward, its face decayed yet smiling. Greater than. "Dinner is served," it whispered. The fog swallowed them whole. Asterisk 7. The log entry asterisk later, no one knows how much later. A transmission was received by a coastal monitoring station near Guam. It was brief and broken. Recorded automatically. Asterisk greater than this is the USS Providence. Boarded derelict ship Arcadia. Crew missing. Fog everywhere. Don't follow. Then static. And beneath the static, for a split second, another voice came through, calm, old-fashioned, and impossibly clear. Greater than this is Captain Elijah Voss of the Arcadia. Dinner awaits. Asterisk, the ghost ship of the Pacific. Part 2. The fog that follows the sea was silent. Not the kind of silence that came with calm weather. This was deeper. Heavier, like the ocean itself was holding its breath. Asterisk Captain Harker opened his eyes to find himself lying on the cold, wet deck of the Arcadia. His head throbbed. The fog pressed in thick as wool, muffling every sound except the slow drip of water from somewhere above. Asterisk, double quotes, ... Sarah. He croaked. No answer. He sat up, clutching his shoulder. The pistol he had drawn earlier was gone. His flashlight flickered weakly, casting long shadows across the rotted wood. For a brief moment he thought he saw movement, a figure vanishing down the corridor. Asterisk Lieutenant Whitmore. He called again. Still nothing. 1. The survivor. He found her in the dining hall, sitting alone beside a broken piano. Her uniform was torn, face pale, eyes wide with shock. Asterisk, they're gone, she whispered. All of them. Asterisk who? Asterisk the boarding team. Ortega, Bennett, Lyle. They were standing right behind me when the fog came. And then she swallowed. They weren't. Asterisk Harker knelt beside her. Listen, we need to regroup. The Providence may still be near. We just need to get topside and signal them. Asterisk, Sarah shook her head slowly. I already tried. The fog's too thick. Radio's dead. Asterisk, he looked up. The chandeliers above them swayed without wind. Somewhere in the distance, the same waltz began to play again. Faint, warped, but distinct blue skies. Harker clenched his jaw. We're not staying here. Asterisk, they moved through the corridors. Flashlights sweeping across peeling wallpaper and rusted fixtures. Every few steps, Harker felt the deck vibrate beneath his boots. A heartbeat, faint but real. To the bridge. Asterisk, they reached the Arcadia's bridge at dawn. The glass windows were shattered, but the fog outside was glowing faintly orange from the rising sun. Asterisk, Sarah gasped. Sir. Look. Asterisk, in the distance. Another ship's silhouette appeared, the Providence. Asterisk, but something was wrong. It wasn't moving. It was drifting, slowly spinning. Its decks tilted, the U.S. flag hanging limp and torn. And through the fog, they could just make out shapes on the deck. People standing perfectly still. Asterisk, is that? Sarah whispered. Asterisk, the crew. Harker said grimly. Looks like they came after us. Asterisk, he reached for the radio on the Arcadia's control panel. To his surprise, it powered on with a low hum. Asterisk, he picked up the mic. Providence, this is Captain Harker. Do you read? Asterisk, static. Then a faint crackle. Asterisk, greater than Captain. We found you. Asterisk, the voice was soft, too soft. It didn't sound like anyone from his crew. It sounded older, like a man speaking through water. Asterisk, greater than come home. Captain Harker. Asterisk, Sarah's hand trembled. That's not them, sir. Asterisk, Harker slowly set the mic down. The compass on the panel began to spin wildly. Outside, the fog thickened again, swallowing the Providence from view. 3. The photos. Asterisk, in the captain's quarters. They found a wall lined with old photographs, passengers smiling, officers posing, families holding champagne glasses, all dated. March 1972, the Arcadia's final voyage. Asterisk, but as Sarah examined one of the frames, she froze. Asterisk, sir. Look at this. It was a black and white photo of the ship's bridge crew. At the center stood a tall man in uniform. Smiling faintly, Captain Elijah Voss. Asterisk, but next to him, blurred but recognizable, was a familiar face. Captain Daniel Harker. He staggered back. That's impossible. Asterisk, Sarah stared at him, voice trembling. How could your face be in a 50-year-old photograph? Asterisk, Harker's breathing quickened. His mind raced, trying to make sense of what he was seeing. Maybe someone who looked like me. A coincidence? Asterisk, but then Sarah pointed to the corner of the picture, where faint handwriting read, Asterisk, Captain Voss and his first officer. Daniel Harker, March 3, 1972. The same name, the same eyes. Asterisk, a cold draft swept through the room. The lights flickered, and every photograph on the wall began to rattle in its frame. Asterisk, one by one, they fell to the floor. Glass shattering. Harker and Sarah bolted for the corridor. Asterisk 4. The voice below. Asterisk. They reached the engine room, a cavern of rusted metal and dripping pipes. A low humming filled the space, like machinery still running beneath decades of decay. Asterisk, Sarah's flashlight caught movement, a shape in the shadows. Crouched beside the engine, It was Ortega, Harker called, rushing forward. We thought you were. The man turned. His eyes were black. His skin glistened like wet kelp, and barnacles had begun to form along his jawline. Captain, he rasped. We're part of her now. Sarah screamed as Ortega lunged forward, inhumanly fast. Harker fired a single deafening shot. Ortega collapsed, twitching, his mouth still moving as if whispering underwater. The hum grew louder. The deck vibrated again, more violently now. The engines are running, Sarah gasped. This ship's alive. And indeed, the gauges began to move. The dials spun, levers shifted on their own, and steam hissed from broken vents. The Arcadia was awakening. 5. The lower deck. They ran toward the lower deck, hoping to find a lifeboat still intact. The air grew colder, and the fog thicker, pouring through vents and cracks, coiling like smoke around their ankles. The hallways seemed longer than before, twisting, repeating, as though the ship itself was changing shape. Doors that once led to cabins now opened into storage rooms or staircases leading nowhere. Sir. Sarah whispered, we've been here before. We're going in circles. Before he could answer, they heard it. The sound of footsteps behind them, slow, measured, metallic. They turned. But the corridor was empty, only fog. Then came a faint whisper. Greater than, you left us, Daniel. Harker froze. Who said that? Greater than you promised you'd return. The fog thickened, taking form the faint outline of a woman in a tattered dress, her hair floating as if underwater. Her voice was soft, full of sorrow. Greater than you were our first officer. You sealed the doors when we begged for help. Harker's eyes widened. Memories flashes flooded his mind. The smell of smoke. The sound of fire alarms, screams behind a locked bulkhead. That can't be real. That wasn't me, he whispered. The woman smiled, her mouth stretching impossibly wide. Welcome back to the Arcadia. She dissolved into mist. 6. The deck of ghosts. They burst out onto the main deck, gasping for air. But the fog had followed them, coiling over the railings like white fire. Figures began to emerge one by one. Dozens of them. Passengers, crew, men, women, even children. Their faces pale, eyes glowing faint blue. They surrounded Harker and Sarah silently. Sarah lifted her flare gun. Stay back. A man stepped forward, the ghostly figure of Captain Elijah Voss. His uniform was immaculate, his expression calm. Mr. Harker, he said in a voice that echoed across the deck. You've finally come home. Harker aimed his pistol. I don't know who you think I am. Voss raised a hand. You do, you were with me that night. When the fire broke out in the lower decks, you sealed the hatches to save the officers, and left the passengers to drown. I wasn't even born then. Time doesn't matter here, Voss said gently. The Arcadia remembers. The fog surged upward, tendrils of light wrapping around the masts. The ocean below began to churn violently. Sarah screamed as ghostly hands reached from the mist, grasping at her arms and legs. Asterisk, Captain, she cried. Asterisk, Harker lunged, pulling her free, but her skin was already cold, turning pale blue. Daniel, it's pulling me, the ghosts whispered in unison. Greater than stay. 7. The choice. Asterisk. Voss approached slowly, extending his hand. You can save her, Daniel. Take your rightful place beside me. The Arcadia always keeps her crew. Asterisk. Harker looked at Sarah, trembling, eyes wide with terror, and then at the apparition before him. Asterisk. He remembered the faces in the photographs. The identical man standing beside Voss. Asterisk. Maybe it had been him. Once. Maybe he'd lived this all before. He took a step forward. The fog coiled eagerly around his boots. Then he stopped. No, he growled. Not this time. Asterisk. He grabbed a flare from his belt, yanked it open, and hurled it toward the control room. Asterisk. The red flame erupted, catching the decayed drapes and broken cables. Fire spread rapidly across the deck, consuming everything in its path. Asterisk. Voss's face twisted in rage. You can't destroy what's already dead. Asterisk. Maybe not, Harker shouted, but I can bury it. Asterisk. He pulled Sarah toward the railing. The ship shuddered violently, the sea boiling beneath them, the air filled with screams. Asterisk. Jump, he yelled, and they leaped into the black water, just as the Arcadia erupted in flame. Asterisk. 8. The sea's return. Asterisk. Harker awoke to blinding sunlight. He was floating on debris, the waves calm around him. The fog was gone. Asterisk. Sarah lay unconscious nearby, breathing weakly. The ocean stretched endlessly blue and peaceful, as if nothing had ever happened. Asterisk. In the distance, a rescue helicopter approached. They were saved, or so it seemed. Asterisk. As the chopper neared, Harker turned to look back, toward where the Arcadia should have sunk. But there was nothing. Only open water. Asterisk. Then, faintly through the static of the helicopter's radio, came a familiar voice. Asterisk. Greater than this is the SS Arcadia. Anyone please respond. Asterisk. Sarah's eyes snapped open. Captain, do you hear that? He did. And when he looked down at his reflection in the water, he didn't see his own face anymore. Asterisk. He saw Captain Elijah Voss smiling back. Asterisk. The Ghost Ship of the Pacific Part 3. The Depths Remember. Asterisk. The ocean had never looked so peaceful. Asterisk. Waves rolled softly beneath a golden sunrise. Gulls crying above like nothing had ever gone wrong. Asterisk. Yet Captain Daniel Harker couldn't stop trembling. Asterisk. He sat wrapped in a navy blanket on the deck of the rescue vessel USCG Sentinel, watching the sea blur past. His uniform was torn, his skin pale, eyes bloodshot from sleepless nights. Asterisk. Across from him, Lieutenant Sarah Whitmore stared silently into the horizon. Her hair clung damply to her face. Her knuckles were white from gripping the railing. Neither had spoken much since they were pulled from the wreckage. Asterisk. The medic's voice broke the silence. You two are lucky. 48 hours adrift any longer, you wouldn't have made it. Asterisk. Sarah's eyes didn't move. We weren't adrift. Asterisk. The medic frowned. What? Asterisk. We weren't adrift, she repeated softly. The ship. Asterisk. Harker's hand tightened on her arm. That's enough, Lieutenant. Asterisk, he turned to the medic. She's exhausted. Just get us to shore. Asterisk, the medic nodded and walked away, leaving them alone again with the sound of waves. Asterisk, Sarah whispered, you saw it too, didn't you? Before the chopper found us. The fog, it came back. Asterisk, Harker didn't answer. He just looked at his reflection in the water. The faint smile of Captain Elijah Voss flashed in his mind like an afterimage. 1. Return to shore, asterisk, 2 days later. They arrived at Naval Station Pearl Harbor. Asterisk, reporters swarmed the pier, shouting questions, cameras flashing. But Harker barely heard them. His mind was still on the Arcadia, the impossible ship, the voices, the faces. Asterisk, Rear Admiral Foster met them in the debriefing room. A gray-haired man with sharp eyes and a tone that cut through fog. Asterisk, Captain Harker, he said, folding his hands. According to your log, your vessel disappeared for 72 hours. You claim you encountered a derelict liner, the SS Arcadia, and that your entire crew is missing. Yes, sir, Harker replied quietly. Foster slid a file across the table. Inside was a photo taken by a reconnaissance drone the day the Providence vanished, asterisk. The image showed an empty sea. New fog. New Arcadia. Satellite imaging shows nothing in that sector, the Admiral said. No wreckage. No storm patterns. Frankly, Captain, the board thinks your vessel suffered a systems failure and your crew was lost due to human error. Asterisk, Sarah slammed her palms on the table. Human error. There was a ship out there. We boarded it. We saw asterisk, Lieutenant. Foster interrupted coldly. There was no ship. Asterisk, he turned to Harker. You'll undergo psychological evaluation. Effective immediately. Both of you are grounded. Asterisk, Sarah looked at Harker. But he didn't protest. Asterisk, he simply said, understood, sir. 2. The dreams, asterisk, that night. In the base infirmary, Harker couldn't sleep. The faint hum of the ventilation system sounded like engines turning beneath the sea. Asterisk, when he closed his eyes, he saw flashes. Corridors flooded with seawater, faces pressed against glass. And Captain Voss, standing on the deck of the Arcadia, hand raised in silent greeting, asterisk, he woke gasping. Drenched in sweat, asterisk, across the room, Sarah was sitting upright on her bed, staring blankly at the window. Asterisk, you heard it too, didn't you? She whispered. The engines, Harker said. She nodded slowly. It's not gone. Asterisk, he hesitated. The ship. Asterisk, she turned toward him, her face pale as the moonlight. The ocean. 3. The investigator asterisk, the next morning. A civilian entered the debriefing room, a man in his 60s, wearing a gray suit and thick glasses. Asterisk, Dr. Jonas Kincaid, he introduced himself. Naval Historian. I've been asked to review your report, Captain. Asterisk, he spread old photos across the table. Black and white images of smiling passengers. The Arcadia's deck gleaming in sunlight. Asterisk, this ship vanished in 1972, he said. Official record says it caught fire and sank near the Mariana Trench. But the distress signal you reported, he paused. It matches the same frequency used by the Arcadia's last transmission. Word for word. Asterisk Sarah leaned forward. You mean? We really heard them. Asterisk Kincaid nodded grimly. Not possible, of course. Radio waves don't last 50 years in open ocean. But the ocean has strange ways of preserving echoes. Asterisk, he looked up at Harker. Tell me, Captain. Did you see anyone aboard? Asterisk Harker hesitated. Yes. Who? Asterisk, Captain Elijah Voss. Asterisk Kincaid froze. You're certain? Asterisk, I saw him. He spoke to me. Asterisk Kincaid's expression darkened. Captain Voss wasn't just any sailor. He was known for conducting illegal experiments, using ocean pressure to test human endurance. When the Arcadia caught fire, half the passengers were trapped below deck. Voss sealed the bulkheads to stop the fire from spreading. Asterisk, Sarah whispered, he killed them. Asterisk, Kincaid nodded. And some say he didn't die. That the Arcadia never sank. It just disappeared. They called it the ghost liner of the Pacific. Asterisk, he looked at Harker sharply. Whatever you saw, Captain, it's not done with you yet. 4. The sea calls back that night, the rain came. Harker stood by the pier, unable to sleep, staring out at the restless waves. The smell of salt filled his lungs, and somewhere far off, he thought he heard the faint ring of a ship's bell. Asterisk ding. Ding. He turned. The pier was empty, only the sound of wind and water. Then his radio crackled. Greater than this is the SS Arcadia. Anyone, please respond. His blood froze. He yanked the device from his belt. Who is this? Asterisk static. Then, softly asterisk, greater than you left us, Daniel. Asterisk, he dropped the radio. It hit the dock with a metallic clang, sliding toward the edge and vanishing into the water. Asterisk, when he looked up again, he saw something impossible. Faint lights under the surface, forming the outline of a massive ship gliding just below the Arcadia 5. The return by morning. The harbor was chaos. Asterisk. One of the Coast Guard patrol ships had gone missing overnight. The USCG Mariner, asterisk Sarah, ran into Harker's quarters, eyes wide. It's happening again. They found a transmission, same voice, same message. Asterisk, he stood slowly, already dressed in his uniform. Where? Asterisk, same coordinates as before. Asterisk, he grabbed his jacket. Then it's not over. Asterisk, Sarah caught his arm. If we go back there, asterisk, we finish it, he said firmly. Once and for all. 6. Into the mist asterisk, they joined Dr. Kincaid aboard a small research vessel, the Endeavour, heading straight toward the last known location of the Mariner. Asterisk, the ocean grew darker as they approached the coordinates. Fog thickened, swallowing the horizon. Asterisk, Kincaid checked the instruments. Electromagnetic interferences off the charts. Something's down there. Asterisk, Sarah's voice was trembling. It's her. The Arcadia, the sonar pinged. A massive shadow appeared beneath the surface, moving slowly toward them. Harker stared at the screen. That's no wreck. Asterisk, suddenly, the engines stalled. The ship drifted in silence, then clang. Something scraped the hull from below. The lights flickered. Water began to slosh onto the deck. Asterisk, Kincaid shouted, "We're being pulled." Asterisk, the vessel tilted sharply. Sarah grabbed Harker's arm, as a giant metallic form broke the surface. The Arcadia rising once more. Black water cascading from her rusted hull. Asterisk, the sound of its engines. The same haunting hum filled the air. 7 below the waves. Asterisk, they were thrown overboard. Cold hit like knives. Harker's lungs burned as he was dragged downward, deeper, until the light above vanished. Asterisk, he opened his eyes underwater. The Arcadia loomed above him, glowing faintly with blue light. Windows flickered as if lit from within. Silhouettes moved behind the glass, passengers dancing, dining, living. Repeating, hands reached for him through the water. Hundreds of pale, lifeless hands. Asterisk, he tried to swim, but something pulled harder, wrapping around his ankle. Asterisk, he looked down and saw Captain Voss floating beneath him. Coat drifting like seaweed, eyes burning bright. Asterisk, greater than you belong below. Daniel, asterisk, Harker struggled. Bubbles escaping his mouth as he screamed silently. Then, a burst of light. Sarah's flare cut through the dark, striking the hull. The explosion echoed through the depths. The pressure wave knocked them free, sending them spiraling upward. 8. The surface asterisk, they broke the surface gasping. The fog had returned, swirling violently. Asterisk, Kincaid's voice came through the radio. Panicked, Captain. The Arcadia's diving again, it's static. Harker turned just in time to see the ship vanish beneath the waves once more. Asterisk, Sarah clung to him, trembling. It's gone, again. He looked at the horizon, empty, silent, endless. No, he said. She's waiting. Asterisk, the water around them rippled faint, rhythmic, like a heartbeat. And then they heard it again, greater than knock, 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 asterisk. 3 slow knocks from beneath the surface. Asterisk, Sarah's voice broke. What does it want? Asterisk, Harker stared into the deep. To remember, the fog closed in again. 9. The depths remember days later. Search teams found only fragments of the Endeavour. No survivors. Asterisk, but the Navy received one final message on an encrypted channel. Time-stamped exactly 72 hours after their disappearance. Asterisk, greater than this is the SS Arcadia. Passengers aboard. Dinner is served. No source could be traced. Yet sometimes, when the ocean is still and the night is clear, sailors report hearing faint music drifting across the Pacific, an old gramophone tune playing, blue skies over the waves. Asterisk, and if you listen closely, you might hear a man's voice whispering just beneath the surface. Asterisk, the sea remembers everything, even those who try to forget. The Ghost Ship of the Pacific Part. For asterisk, the voices in the deep asterisk, approximately 3,000 words. The ship USS Franklin drifted in silence. Asterisk, the storm had passed, but the sea still moved in restless, heavy waves. Asterisk, the crew gathered in small, frightened groups, faces, pale uniforms soaked with salt and fear. They had lost 12 men last night. No one could explain how. Asterisk, Captain Harris stood on the bridge, staring into the horizon. The fog hadn't lifted since the storm ended. It seemed thicker now, denser, like something alive was breathing it out from below the sea. The compass still spun aimlessly, and the GPS screen was filled with static. Asterisk, Captain, said First Officer Lewis quietly. The men are losing it. Some swear they're hearing voices. From the ocean, Harris didn't respond right away. His eyes were fixed on the sea below, dark, endless, and strangely calm. Voices. He repeated finally. What kind of voices? Like whispers. Calling their names. Some said they heard family members, others screams. Harris rubbed his temples. Keep everyone off the lower decks. Until we figure out what's happening. Lewis hesitated. Sir, there's more. Petty Officer Michaels jumped overboard this morning. Said his mother was calling him. The captain's heart dropped. And gone. The waves swallowed him. That night, Harris couldn't sleep. The air inside his cabin felt heavy and damp, as if the fog had crept through the walls. He could hear faint tapping sounds on the window, rhythmic, like someone knocking from the outside. He turned on the desk lamp and opened his logbook. Greater than, day 6, the storm has passed, but the crew's morale is collapsing. We are adrift, with no navigational readings. Something unnatural surrounds us. He paused. The tapping grew louder, now more deliberate. 3 slow knocks. Then silence. He rose from his chair and stepped toward the porthole. The fog pressed against the glass, milky white and shifting, and then a face appeared. Not human, eyes black and wide, like an eel's. The mouth stretched too far, open in a soundless scream. Harris stumbled backward, heart pounding. The face faded back into the fog. He rushed to the deck. The fog was thicker than ever. He couldn't see more than 2 meters ahead. Hello. He called out. Who's there? Only silence answered. Then, from somewhere deep in the mist, voice whispered, Captain, come to us. He froze. The voice sounded exactly like his wife's, but she had died years ago. Mary, he whispered. Come below, James. The voice said softly. They're waiting. He found himself walking toward the lower deck hatch before realizing what he was doing. The door was already open. From below came the faint sound of dripping water and humming. It sounded like a lullaby. He descended. The lower deck was half flooded. The water reached his knees, and it was ice cold. The emergency lights flickered, casting red reflections on the moving surface. Mary. He called again, voice trembling. Something rippled in the water. A shadow, then another. The humming stopped. Suddenly, the sound of chains rattling echoed through the corridor. Harris turned, flashlight shaking. There just at the end of the hall stood a figure. A woman. Her hair floated around her head as if underwater. Her skin was pale, translucent. Mary. The ghostly figure turned toward him. Its mouth opened, and black water poured out. Join us, Captain, it gurgled. The sea is hungry. The light flickered and died. Harris screamed as cold hands grabbed his ankles, pulling him down into the dark water. Above deck, Officer Lewis heard the commotion. He and 2 sailors rushed below, only to find the corridor empty, except for the captain's cap floating on the water's surface. They searched the entire deck. Nothing. He's gone, whispered one of the men. The sea took him. Lewis clenched his fists. No, we're getting off this ship. We'll find a way. But when they climbed back to the bridge, the fog had changed color. It was glowing faintly blue, pulsing like a heartbeat. Lewis approached the window. What the hell? Asterisk, the ocean below was glowing too. Shapes moved beneath the surface. Massive, slow, impossible to make out. Then something rose from the depths. A shadow larger than the ship itself. It surfaced for only a moment, but the men saw it clearly, a creature with a body like a whale, but covered in barnacled faces, human faces, screaming silently through the fog. Asterisk, one of the sailors dropped to his knees, whispering prayers. Another screamed and ran for the lifeboats. The fog swallowed them instantly. Lewis stood frozen, unable to move. The creature sank back into the deep, leaving only silence and blue ripples. Asterisk, he turned to the remaining crew. We hold together, he said shakily. Whatever this is, it feeds on fear. Don't listen to the voices. Don't go into the fog. But as he spoke, the intercom system crackled to life. A voice came through. The captain's voice. Greater than, this is Captain Harris. All hands to the lower deck. I repeat, all hands below. Asterisk, Lewis stared in horror at the speaker. The captain was dead. The men hesitated, glancing at each other. Sir, it's the captain. Asterisk, no. Lewis shouted. That's not him. But the voice repeated, calm and commanding. Greater than, obey your captain. And this time, half the crew began to move toward the hatch. Asterisk, in the control room, Lewis shut off the radio system. But even with the power down, the voice continued now, echoing from the walls themselves, like the ship was alive. Asterisk, he clutched the railing. We're trapped, he whispered. This ship isn't a ship anymore. Then the metal under his feet groaned deep and long. The ship's hull began to twist. Asterisk, the lights burst, one after another, until darkness swallowed everything. Asterisk, somewhere far below, something ancient and patient was rising from the deep, drawn by the fear and the blood. Asterisk, the USS Franklin began to move on its own, drifting into the heart of the fog. Asterisk, and from within that fog, faint, distorted music began to play, an old sailor's tune, warped and slow. Asterisk, Lewis stood at the window, watching as the last stars disappeared above. The sea whispered back to him. Greater than, you shouldn't have come here. The Ghost Ship of the Pacific. Part 5. The Heart of the Fog, approximately 3,000 words. The fog pressed against the USS Franklin, like a living thing, curling around the ship's hull, seeping into every crevice. Officer Lewis's hands shook on the railing. The intercom's whispers had stopped, but their absence was worse. It left only anticipation. The heavy knowledge that the ship itself had become a predator. Asterisk, the glowing blue mist outside pulsed slowly, rhythmically like a heartbeat. Shadows moved just beneath the surface. Massive forms, gliding silently, watching. Every sailor on the deck felt it. Something vast and patient, waiting for them to slip, to falter. Asterisk, Lewis looked around. Half the crew had disappeared into the lower decks, drawn by the echoing voice of Captain Harris. Only a handful remained on the bridge, terrified, silent, frozen by what they had seen. Asterisk, Lewis. What do we do? Whispered Petty Officer Simmons. His voice trembled, barely audible over the groaning of the ship. Asterisk, Lewis clenched his fists, trying to force courage into his body. We survive. That's all. We find a way out of this. Alive. Asterisk, he scanned the instruments. Compass still spun wildly. Radar was useless. The GPS screen had gone black. Not one device offered hope. Only the fog and its endless whispers remained. The hatch leading to the lower decks groaned. A faint glow pulsed from below. One of the surviving sailors, Private Thompson, looked down nervously. I think I heard voices again, he said, his face pale. Calling me. Lewis grabbed him by the shoulder. Don't listen. Whatever it is, it wants you to go down there. Don't go. You hear me? The man nodded, trembling. A sudden tremor shook the ship. The USS Franklin shuddered as if it had hit something, or perhaps something had hit it. Then a metallic screech, like dragging chains, echoed from below. The deck vibrated. The railings rattled. Lewis realized with a shiver that the ship's movement was no longer controlled by engines or currents. It was alive. It was steering itself. And whatever lived inside the fog was guiding it. Down below, the lower decks were now a surreal landscape. Water lapped at waist height, reflecting red and blue glows from unseen sources. Shadows flitted in the corners, sometimes human, sometimes not. Sailors whispered in strange tongues, words that sounded almost familiar, but carried a weight that made Lewis's stomach twist. He forced himself down the staircase, flashlight cutting a thin swath of light through the misty darkness. Captain Harris, he called. His voice sounded absurdly loud in the echoing hall. We're leaving this ship. No answer. Only the sound of water dripping, chains clanking, and faint, distant humming. Then he saw it. The walls themselves were moving. Not like walls normally do, but rippling, as if the steel was flesh. Faces pressed against the metal from inside, pale, screaming faces of men and women, mouths open in silent agony. Their eyes followed him. Some moved independently, turning toward him even as others stayed fixed. Lewis swallowed hard. This isn't real, he whispered to himself. It can't be. But it was real. The smell of brine and iron filled the air. A chill ran up his spine. He pressed on, following the glow that pulsed like a heartbeat deeper into the lower decks. The water rose above his knees. Each step was a struggle. Then came the whispers again, soft, insistent, each voice familiar, each one calling his name. Lewis. Come to us. No, he shouted. I am not coming. A shadow detached itself from the darkness ahead. At first it seemed like a man, but the moment he raised the flashlight, Lewis realized the figure had no face. Just a smooth, featureless mask, dripping black water onto the deck. It moved without sound, gliding across the water. Lewis stepped back, but the corridor behind him had disappeared. In its place was more water, endless darkness. Panic clawed at his chest. The shadow stopped a few feet away, and the water rippled unnaturally. Then the surface of the liquid broke. Something massive rose slowly, a colossal hand, skin pale as bone, barnacles clinging to its wrist. Lewis realized with horror that the hand was not human, not entirely. Its fingers ended in sharp, fin-like tips, and faint faces were embedded in the flesh. Screaming faces. The soundless screams carried a weight in the chest. as if the fear itself was pressing down physically. Lewis fell backward, splashing into icy water. "Move, move," he yelled, adrenaline surging. He scrambled to his feet and ran deeper, following the pulsing glow, desperate for any escape. The corridors twisted now in impossible ways. Staircases led back into themselves. Doors opened into ceilings. The lower decks had become a labyrinth, a living nightmare. From the fog, the voice came again. Hera's voice. Calm, commanding, terrifying. Greater than Lewis. "You cannot escape. Obey, join us." No. Lewis screamed. "I will not." Suddenly, a group of sailors appeared from the mist. Their eyes were black, like empty voids. They moved mechanically, silently. Each step echoed like it was on someone else's command. One reached toward him with a hand that dripped black water. Lewis lunged to the side. The hand brushed his shoulder, leaving a cold mark that burned like fire. He felt the coldness seep into his bones, a paralysis of fear and obedience. He shook violently, fighting it off. "Not me," he whispered through gritted teeth. "Not me. Never." A distant roar shook the ship. The USS Franklin groaned, as if responding to some ancient command. Water surged violently in the hallways, almost pushing Lewis off his feet. Shadows leaped across the walls, distorted, twisting into monstrous forms. And then he saw it. Through a doorway, faintly glowing in the fog, stood Captain Harris. Or rather, something wearing Harris likeness. His eyes were voids, endless darkness. His mouth stretched impossibly wide. He extended a hand, beckoning. "Join us, Lewis," the voice said. "It is your fate." Lewis' mind screamed. He could feel the pull, the compulsion to obey, to step into the water, to join the endless chorus below. The blackness promised reunion with the dead, release from fear, from life itself. He closed his eyes and forced his mind to remember. His training, his family, the promise to survive. With a guttural roar, he ripped free from the invisible pull and ran. The water rose higher, now at his chest. Shadows surged after him. He leaped into an opening small service hatch and slammed it shut behind him. Darkness enveloped him, but he was momentarily safe. The hatch led to a maintenance corridor, partially dry. Lewis gasped for air, his heart hammering. The glow from the lower decks was gone. For a moment, silence reigned. Then came the whispers, again, but this time different. Not Harris's voice. Not his crew. Not human. Greater than you, cannot leave. The sea hungers. Lewis moved quickly, trying to map the maze in his head. Every corridor seemed to stretch impossibly, bending, twisting. The ship's architecture no longer obeyed physics. He realized, with horror, that the USS Franklin had become a vessel for something ancient, something alive beneath the waves. The very walls pulsed like a beating heart. Water seeped through the seams. The air itself tasted like iron and brine. And somewhere, deep below, the thing in the ocean waited. Hours passed. Lewis stumbled through corridors that seemed endless. Each turn brought new horrors, walls with faces pressed from the inside, shadows that moved independently, whispers calling him, tempting him. He fought to resist, forcing himself to breathe, forcing himself to move. Eventually, he found himself at what appeared to be the engine room. The massive turbines were spinning, though the engines were long dead. Lights flickered. The humming of the ship filled the room, low, rhythmic, like a heartbeat. Lewis approached the main control panel. His fingers hovered over the switches. He didn't know what would happen. He didn't know if anything could stop this SIF. Anything could stop the USS Franklin from its slow drift into the abyss. But he had to try. Flipping a breaker, he diverted power to the emergency bulkheads. The lights flickered violently. The water surged. The ship shuddered. A massive crack ran through the floor. Shadows recoiled. The fog outside the portholes thickened, glowing brighter, almost angry. Then a sound like 1,000 screaming mouths underwater, rising all at once. The ship trembled as if it were alive and in pain. Lewis held on to the panel, praying it would work. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, impossibly, the corridors began to stabilize. The walls stopped shifting. The water began to recede. The whispers faded to distant echoes. The shadowed figures froze and disappeared. The USS Franklin drifted, now eerily calm, through the glowing blue fog. The lower decks were still flooded, but the pull was gone. Lewis collapsed against the panel, exhausted, drenched, and trembling. He had survived. Somehow, but as he looked out through the engine room's porthole, his relief died. The fog ahead was thicker than ever. And deep within it, something massive moved. Shapes beyond comprehension, moving beneath the surface. Following the ship, watching, waiting, and from the darkness faintly, the whispers returned, greater than you escaped. For now, Lewis knew deep in his bones that the USS Franklin was never leaving the Pacific alive. And neither would they, if the fog ever chose to claim them again. Somewhere far below, in the heart of the abyss, something ancient stirred, patient, hungry, eternal. The USS Franklin sailed on, and the ocean waited.